Welcome to the Max Future Weekly Podcast. All Apple talk and no chit chat.
Okay, hey, this is Lex at maxfuture.com, and this is the Apple Podcast episode 123. Today is July 25th, 2012, and you're listening to a chit-chat-free podcast all about Apple, Apple stuff, Apple news, Apple apps, Apple products, Apple computers, Apple iPads, Apple iPhones, a lot of Apple stuff. And you can help out this podcast by giving it a positive review in the iTunes store. So let's get to it. There's a lot of big news to discuss, so no more chit-chat. Okay, so, hey, this week, yesterday and today were big news for Apple. And the first part of the news was not good news for Apple, and that was its quarterly results, which came out after the market closed yesterday for the third quarter. Apple's fiscal quarter ends at the end of June. So this was for the 3 months, April, May, June results in 2012. And the other big news was that Mountain Lion was released today. So I'm going to discuss a lot of the podcast today is going to be about the Apple results, Apple as a business, where is it going, that sort of thing. And the other part's going to be about Mountain Lion. So let's first talk about Apple's third quarter results. Now, before I go into this, I should disclaim something, which is I hold Apple stock. I've long held Apple stock. And so my advice here is not any sort of business advice, whether to invest or anything like that. And I just want to disclose that, I have that position in Apple. I also own stock in Google and some other companies too. Anyway, so here's what happened. Apple came out with its quarterly results, and if you didn't really follow Apple, and I read you these results, which are on Apple's website, you'd be like, wow, this is a really highly successful company, and it's doing really, really well. So what were the results? Well, Apple basically sold 17 million iPads in the quarter, and it posted revenue of $35 billion and a net profit of $8.8 billion, which comes down to a profit of $9.32 a share. Now, compared to the same quarter a year ago, Apple had $28.6 billion a year ago. So it went from $28.6 billion revenue to $35 billion in revenue, and it went from $7.3 billion in profit to $8.8 billion in profit. So its profit went up, and its gross margin, how much it makes profit on each dollar of sale, it went from 41.7% a year ago to 42.8%. So, that sounds like good news, right? I mean, it sounds like it's like a 20+% increase from a year ago. Now, in terms of individual products, the big seller was the iPhone. Apple sold 26 million iPhones in the quarter, which is 28% greater than it sold a year ago. And Apple sold 17 million iPads this quarter, which is an 84% increase from a year ago's quarter. And it sold 4 million Macintoshes during the quarter, which is a 2% increase over the year quarter. And also Apple sold 6.8 million iPods, which is 10% less than a year ago. And let's see. So here's the thing, though. These results were considered a miss because analysts, business analysts, had estimated more iPhones being sold and more profit and more revenue for the quarter. Even though this was, a great increase from the year before, analysts had expected a greater increase. And so the stock sort of tanked. Well, not tanked big time. So let's look at the 5-day chart here on Yahoo Finance. And right now the stock is trading at $575 roughly. So what happened was on Tuesday morning, the stock was trading around $606, $605. And as the day went forward, it ended around 601, a little over $600. So that's right before the news came out. And then in the aftermarket, when this news came out that Apple's earnings were somewhat below the estimates of analysts, the stock plunged like 4 or 5% down to about $565. So it went from 600 to 565. Think about it this way: if this was a $60 stock, it went to $56 and change. Anyways, today it recovered a little bit, and it's at 575. So, it was a miss by Apple, a miss in terms of what analysts had predicted. And, why did it miss? Well, I mean, here's my sort of thinking about it. Apple's main revenue is from the iPhone. The iPhone plays a big part. I think something like 50%, I think, of all revenue comes from the iPhone. And the Apple's iPhone, only gets updated once a year. And last year, Apple moved when it updates the iPhone from June, which it had done in previous years, to October. In fact, the day after Steve Jobs died. October, actually the day before Steve Jobs died, October 4th. So last year, Apple, for the quarter that was like June, July, August, September, Apple missed that quarter because a lot of analysts were, thinking there was going to be great growth. But without the refresh of the iPhone in June, there wasn't that big surge, because a lot of people sort of are waiting for the next iPhone. And I think what happened in this quarter, and I think in the conference call, Tim Cook and his CFO sort of talked about this, was that, there's been really lots and lots of rumors and leaks about the next generation iPhone, the iPhone 5, which is going to come out in September. And the next generation iPhone, everyone believes, is going to be redesigned and thinner and longer than the current version. And remember, the iPhone 4S, which came out last year, the body wasn't really redesigned from what it was the year before. Still, it's sold like hotcakes. So part of it could be that, there might have been not as many people buying iPhones this quarter because they're waiting for the iPhone 5. So that certainly, I think, played a big part of it. Then the other factor is there has been a kind of economic meltdown going on in this past quarter, and particularly it's resulted in the dollar appreciating, relative to some foreign currencies, which I guess makes the iPhone more expensive, like abroad. But I think it's mainly that. I mean, when you have the iPhone is such a big part of revenue that it's hard to estimate how much revenue Apple's going to make in quarters, because it's on such a rapid growth, it's kind of hard to keep track. So, personally, I think, it's a challenge for Apple to keep growing and growing and growing, but I do think it has room to grow. And I personally think that Apple's big quarter is going to be the quarter ending the end of December of this year. So not even the coming quarter. I don't think the coming quarter is going to be a big quarter for Apple. The coming quarter, there's no new iPhone. The new iPhone is probably going to come out either at the very end of September or in October. And that's when you're going to see a huge surge. You're going to see a huge surge of sales in the iPhone in October, December, and November and December. And so the results for that quarter, which is, I guess, the first quarter, Apple's first fiscal quarter, they're going to probably come out in January. The other thing that could happen is Apple could release the iPad, the 7-inch or 8-inch iPad in the fall. And together with that, that's going to probably sell like hotcakes. So I don't think Apple is done, but I do think that it's hard to sustain growth, like massive growth quarter after quarter, particularly when you don't have, a new iPhone come out. Now, it could be that Apple, I don't know, should Apple go to releasing new iPhones on a 6-month basis? I'm not sure if that makes sense, but, it's something to think about. Okay, so now, in addition to releasing the financial results, Apple's Tim Cook, who's the CEO, and the CFO, Peter Oppenheimer, they held a conference call with analysts, and, there were some interesting things said. For example, Tim Cook was asked about China sales, and he said that the sales in Greater China fell $2.2 billion from the second quarter, which was $7.9 billion, to $5.7 billion. But it's up 48% compared to what it sold a year ago. And he basically said that this was primarily to lower iPhone sales after the big Chinese New Year sales. So China, I guess, in February or so, has, a big holiday. It's sort of like our Christmas. And so maybe there was like a lot of sales in that quarter because of, the holiday. He also said that there were delayed sales of the new iPad because of the trademark litigation in China, and also the MacBook Airs were waiting for regulatory approval. But key important thing, he doesn't see any effect of a slowing economy in China, and that mainland China sales were up 100% year over year. So his, I think, look, now the iPad's being officially sold in China, and I think China's, even with like the economy maybe in China being a little slower and in Europe, I think there's going to be significant growth in China because Apple's presence is expanding in China, and now the iPad is being officially sold there. And remember, China is a country with 1 billion people. China has a decent size, middle class that likes luxury. And I was in China a couple of years ago, in Shanghai, and they were crazy about Apple products. People trying to sell iPhones on the street. There are all these electronics shops with, stocked with iPads and iPhones. And I don't know. I think, Apple still has room to grow in China, because also China Mobile, which is the biggest mobile company in China, isn't officially selling the iPhone. Right now, China Unicom and I guess a third place carrier sell it. And at some point, there's an expectation that Apple's going to cut a deal with China Mobile, and the iPhone will be sold on China Mobile too. So that's another area of potential growth for Apple. Peter Oppenheimer noted that the U.S. dollar has strengthened against most currencies, which also slows sales overseas. So that could have played a factor in it. And apparently in this conference call, both Oppenheimer and Tim Cook dropped hints about future products, sort of suggesting that they could be just around the corner. Now, they didn't really expand on that. It's unclear what they were talking about. It could be just the new iPhone and not a smaller iPad. He was asked, Tim Cook, at some point if if there were the Mac sales didn't take off because of cannibalization. That's what they call it, from the iPad. And Tim Cook said no, that the chief cause was the late launch of the new MacBooks, and that makes sense because the Macs haven't been updated for a really, really long time, and the MacBook Pro didn't get updated until July, which is after the quarter. So, we're probably going to see more MacBook Air and MacBook Pro sales in this quarter because they were just updated. So whenever there's an update, there's a surge of sales because a lot of people usually wait for the latest launch, particularly after time has gone by. Now, similarly, the iMac and the Mac Mini has not been updated for quite a while, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were updated this quarter. At some point, Tim Cook was asked about selling into the third world, and Tim Cook reiterated that he believes people in all markets want the best products, he said. And so he said, quote, "So we're going to stick to our knitting and make the very best products," end quote. So I think what Tim Cook means by that, stick to our knitting, he means, like they're not, Apple's not going to try to like be like Samsung and just sort of wing out all sorts of, smartphones of different styles and different sizes, but rather stick to what Apple does best, which is make a premium product and not come out with a lot of models, but come out with a model that's premium and that is well made. One thing that he really emphasized was that the iPad has done well. He said that Apple sold 1 million iPad 2s into the kindergarten through 12 education market. And he said most customers aren't looking for a tablet, they're looking for an iPad. The iPad in international markets saw triple-digit growth. The U.S. is a little slower, and Latin America is tripling. I guess Cook said, quote, "We see growth in some countries that are bordering on shocking," end quote. Now, what's interesting is the Apple TV, which is still just a hobby, is selling. Apple's selling a lot. Apple sold 1.3 million Apple TVs in the quarter, which is up 170% from a year ago. And in the fiscal year so far, Apple has sold 4 million units. And so, Apple is selling, I guess, more Apple TVs in the quarter than Microsoft is selling Xbox. Tim Cook was specifically asked about India. How come Apple isn't doing as well, selling, I guess, in India? And he said, quote, "I love India," end quote, but thinks Apple has better potential in other countries. Something else that Cook said, he said, quote, "We're maniacally focused on making the best products," end quote. When he was asked about cutting prices, he said, quote, "That's why we breathe, that's why we live, and we're not going to change that." So, I take that to mean that Apple is not into like making cheap products that are low priced, but rather making really good products that people are willing to pay a premium for. So, overall, I think it's a challenge for Tim Cook. He's dealing with a whale of a company, and there's so much pressure to grow the company. And the thing is, when you're that big, how much more room for growth is there? Now, in terms of a company, Apple, its current PE ratio is 14, which isn't that high. And I think the analyst Jim Cramer pointed out that in terms of future earnings, it's trading at a PE ratio of only 11, which isn't that high. To give you a comparison, Amazon let's look at Amazon. Amazon, this is what I scratch my head, because Amazon, its PE ratio is 179. So what that means is the price of the shares as a ratio to the earnings that you would get per share is 179 times the ratio. For Apple, it's 14. So in other words, you're only paying 14 times the earnings as a price of the company. So, some people think that Apple's still relatively a cheap stock. You don't look at the stock price, you look at the earnings per share. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see, what happens in the coming quarters. Now, one thing to note is that Apple continued to add to its piggy bank. I think it added something like $8 billion or something like that. And so Apple's piggy bank, which is essentially the money it's saved up, is phenomenal. Apple has no debt, and now its cash or cash equivalents or marketable securities, which we will call its piggy bank, are something like just short of $117 billion. So that's pretty amazing. So in terms of what it's invested, that $117 million, cash makes up $3,269,000,000, and that's in cash, I guess, isn't that? And then U.S. Treasury securities are $20 billion and change. U.S. agency securities are just short of $20 billion, but $19,197,000,000. Non-U.S. government securities are $6.9 billion. Certificates of deposits and time deposits are $2.4 billion. Commercial paper are $2.3 billion. Corporate securities, which I guess is, it's buying stock, I guess, in some companies, are $44.5 billion. And its municipal securities are $5.5 billion, and mortgage and asset-backed securities are $8.86 billion. I mean, this is such a huge investment in securities and treasury bills. I mean, if you think about it, someone at Apple, whoever's managing this, I guess the treasurer is, this is like, a gigantic hedge fund. Or imagine a hedge fund that managed $117 billion in investments. That's pretty amazing. So the question is, Apple did announce it's going to give a dividend. It's going to distribute a dividend in, I think it's in July or August. Now, it's not like a huge dividend, but it is giving out a couple of dollars, I think, a share. I think it's like $2 a share, a little over $2. And then it's going to do a stock buyback in the fall, which is that Apple's going to use some money to go out and buy back its own stock. Now, one of the reasons it does that is Apple gives stock awards to its employees. And so that way, it'll buy back stock, and then it'll issue stock to its employees, and then the total outstanding shares of stock will stay relatively the same. That's what Apple said previously when it announced this. So, it's still appears to be a very well-run company. Now, over at Fortune, at the Apple 2.0 blog by Philip Elmer DeWitt, Philip Elmer DeWitt had a nice little roundup regarding what the analysts are saying about Apple's, miss in the quarter, the third quarter. And he gives a nice little survey. For example, he has Needham's, this is a securities firm, Charlie Wolf, said, quote, although Apple beat its consistently conservative guidance of $8.68 for the third quarter, the beat was less than it typically been in recent quarters. The chief culprit in the miss was the weak economies across Europe, and while iPhone sales increased 100% year over year in mainland China, this increase actually represented a slowdown in growth from previous quarters. He put in maintain a buy rating and a target price of $6.20. Deutsche Bank's analyst said iPhone units were light demand pause ahead of iPhone 5. In other words, suggesting that what's going on is people waiting to see the iPhone 5. He said iPhone unit shipments totaled 26 million and were worse than expected. The street estimated 28 million iPhones. Further, he said iPhone channel inventory is 8 million, suggesting that the September quarter will require an inventory workdown with muted sell-through. I'm not sure what that means. So let's see. Topeka's Brian White wrote, this is Topeka Securities, I guess, wrote, Apple's rare miss last night reminds us of last October when the company came up short and the stock was punished severely. However, the October sell-off proved to be an excellent buying opportunity, and we believe the current dip will as well. With the iPhone 5 launch on the horizon and other potential new products in the coming quarters, we believe Apple stock is prepared for the next major leg up. And so they're sticking with their price target of $1,111. Let's see. Piper Jaffray's Gene Munster, according to this roundup, said, quote, investors were bracing for a weak June iPhone number and soft September guidance and got an even weaker iPhone number and more conservative guidance, which will fuel concern heading into the September 12th quarter. While the concern is legitimate, we believe it is largely irrelevant because iPhone will rebound in the December 12 quarter as it has in the past. More importantly, September 12 will likely be reported after the iPhone 5 release, which should more than outweigh the September iPhone number. Bottom line, it's not as bad as it looks, and we believe the primary reason for the soft iPhone number is anticipation of iPhone 5, and they're maintaining a $910 price target. Let's see. So, I mean, he's got... I'll have a link to Philip Elmer DeWitt's survey. It's very comprehensive, and he sort of goes through what the different securities analysts say. Goldman Sachs analyst says, quote, while we had expected some weakness as a result of a pause in iPhone demand ahead of the iPhone 5 refresh, the impact was greater than we anticipated. In addition, Apple's gross margin performance and macro commentary served as a key source of disappointment. Despite the disappointment, we believe investor concerns may be very short-term in nature, and we suspect the stock will rebound quickly. And they reiterate their buy rating, and they've lowered their target to 790 from 850. So, there's a range of, I guess, price targets from the low to middle 600s to as high as this like 1,100 amount. So nobody knows what's going to happen. I mean, all sorts of things could happen, but if the iPhone 5 comes out and it people get excited about it, it could lead to huge sales for Apple. Similarly, if a new iPad 7-inch or 8-inch unit comes out, or an actual Apple TV. So we'll have to see what happens. It's going to be very interesting. Okay, so one other thing that Tim Cook announced yesterday during the conference call was that Mountain Lion, which was scheduled to be released in late July, was actually going to be released today, July 25th. And so today is Mountain Lion Day. And if in case you don't know, what Mountain Lion is the latest operating system for the Macintosh. And so it's been released and downloaded. Now, I've had Mountain Lion for a while because I joined the developers program, I guess, a while ago. And if you pay $99 a year, you get access to early releases in the beta of different operating systems. And remember, Apple announced that was going to be working on Mountain Lion, I think way back in February. or March. And then shortly after, Apple released a beta of Mountain Lion. And I think they went through 5 betas, the 5th one being the Gold Master, which I think the Gold Master is the same as what was released today. So I've been working with it for a while. I installed it actually I installed the Gold Master on both my iMac and my MacBook Air. I installed earlier betas of Mountain Lion on my MacBook Air, and I like it. I like it a lot, and so here's the thing: it's only $19.99 to upgrade from either Snow Leopard or from Lion. So you could skip Lion and go straight from Snow Leopard to Mountain Lion for only $19.99. And this is the lowest price Apple's ever had for an operating system. Last year, and I think it was the year before, Apple charged only $29.99. So, it's kind of a bargain. And for $19.99, they let you install it on any Macs that you own or control. So that's pretty cheap. So if you have like 5 Macs, you can, download it to as many as you want. So, I think it's a pretty good deal. So, what's in Mountain Lion? What are the things? What are the big things? So, why don't I show you? I have it running here on my MacBook Air, and I'll tell you what I think are the biggest highlights. The thing that really sort of jumps up to me as being really cool and really important. So let's take text edit. Okay, here I'm working on my links in text edit. So, well, actually, here's the thing. Apple has a Siri-like function now in Mountain Lion. So you can now dictate wherever you can type. So wherever your cursor is, that sort of blinking cursor for typing, you can now dictate. So basically you have voice dictation built in. Now the default setting for voice dictation is the function key. And what you do is you press it twice, and I'm just going to press it twice now, and then dictate something. And then the dictation is going to go to the cloud and then come back. And then I'm just going to press, when I'm done, function key twice again. So here we go. Okay, so this is a test to see how well the dictation works in Mountain Lion, period. I am going to dictate several sentences, period. I am now going to say something else, period. Let's see what it looks like, period. So there you go. Well, the font's a little small because I've been using a small font. Let me make it bigger here. And that's just because the default setting. Let's go to 18. So this is what I dictated. I said, okay, so this is a test to see how well the dictation works. I said in Mountain Lion. It said in Mountain Lion. Then it goes on to say, I need to dictate several sentences. I am now going to say something. Let's see what it looks like. So, I have the air conditioner going loudly, but the dictation was pretty good. And I think this is going to get only better as, whatever the cloud brain that translates this stuff works. But it's really incredible because we're heading towards an age when dictation or voice control is going to be huge. Already on the iPhone, we've had Siri on the iPhone 4S, and the latest beta of iOS 6 allows Siri to do all sorts of controls on the iPhone. And I think that Siri is going to eventually come to the Macintosh. I mean, the Mac is now sort of like where the iPad 3 was. When the iPad 3 came out, you had voice dictation, but we know that in the next iOS 6, the iPad 3rd generation is going to get Siri. So I do think that we're going to get Siri eventually, but now we have this cool... we've got this cool, voice dictation. Here's another thing that you can do. I'm gonna dictate something else. All right, here we go. 1 plus 2 equals 3, period. 3 plus 4 equals 5, period. Actually, that's wrong, period. Okay, I guess I got 1 plus 2 equals 3, period. I think I got some of that wrong. But anyways, the point is it's pretty decent. So that's definitely one feature that I find to be really cool. Now, the other big feature that you're going to have in Mountain Lion is iCloud integration. And so this is kind of revolutionary because you're going to be basically saving stuff not in typical folders, but in sort of in the app itself, and it's going to be backed up to iCloud and then available in other apps or in other versions of the app that you have on other Macintoshes or the iOS devices. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so let's take a look at iCloud. So let me give you an example here with text edit. So here's the text edit app, and if I go to open, right, notice what you see now. Now you have two choices: to see and open the documents that are in iCloud, and you can see I already have some documents. These are documents that I created that were in iCloud. And so what it means is it's not only on your it's in the cloud, and it's also on your computer. And if you don't want to open a document in iCloud but on your Mac, you click on your Mac, and it gives you like a choice of, let's say, what's in your documents. Now, here's what's interesting. So to sort of, get you there, you can sort of drag out of this iCloud section of your app the documents if you want to no longer have them there. So I'm just dragging it, and it says, I get this little window that says, are you sure you want to move Apple 121 from iCloud? Moving the item out of an iCloud library will also delete it from all your other synced iCloud devices. Okay. Now the other thing that you can do is you can drag documents into iCloud. So, for example, let's say here's a memo. I'm just going to put it into iCloud. Now it's iCloud. And you can also create folders. I just did right now in iCloud by dragging documents on top of each other. But if I don't want it in there, I can drag it out, and I'll get that. Will it come out? I don't know. Oh yeah, I get that warning again that says, "Are you sure you want to move the document from iCloud?" And I go move. So the point is, they still give you some flexibility, and I guess you can rename folders in this like iCloud section of a document, and you can also do the quick view function when you're in it. So it's sort of like a folder, but the folder is in the cloud associated with the document. And so other Apple apps have been updated today, like Pages, like Keynote, like Numbers, and to be integrated with iCloud. And a lot of third-party apps like Byword are already integrated in iCloud. So this is a different workflow, and I kind of like this a lot because I've been already a big Dropbox user, and so it's nice having this kind of integration. It's particularly useful if you have more than one Mac, and or a Mac and an iPhone and an iPad, because now, like, if you have you're working on a document on one device or computer, it's just going to be seamlessly linked to the app on the other devices. Now, if you want to work on it in a different I guess, a different program, you can, I guess, drag it out of your iCloud area like I showed you, and then open it in a different program. I don't know if there's a quicker way to do it. Now, I'm hoping at some point Apple might create an option to use iCloud like Dropbox and have a folder on your computer also be designated to be iCloud backed up. That would be a nice change. Now, what happens? I guess one thing you don't get is when you right click on a document, you don't get info, so you don't get that anymore. And I wonder if you go, so there's no Finder. Let's see, show properties. Now, show properties doesn't show you where it's located. So that's a big part of Mountain Lion. Another big feature is you now have a notification center, and it's in the top right area there. And you just click on it. It opens. It's near the Spotlight search, and you have a notification center, so you can have your email, your reminders, your Twitter feeds, all that notification, including apps. Like here, I have Xcode, and there was a successful build, so that sent a notification. I was using Air Server, and so I think this is useful, the notifications function. You also have a messages app that's just like the one on the iPhone, and it's going to be integrated with your phone number, so it'll be unified at some point. So that's really big. Another big feature is you're going to have AirPlay mirroring on, so you'll be able to I guess send your computer screen, if you have a Wi-Fi network and an Apple TV, you're going to be able to share it over AirPlay. So that's pretty cool. Now, one way you do that, I think you go into Displays, and there's a button under Displays, AirPlay mirroring, and I'm going to put it on. Click it on. Let's see if it goes on. It's taking a while. Yeah. So bedroom. And so now when I go up to show mirroring options in the menu bar when available. So now, let's see, I have this little, and I can choose bedroom Apple TV. So it's mirroring to the Apple TV. Now you can't see it. I can't show you the TV with this screencast, but it's pretty cool. This is a pretty powerful feature, and it's going to be very useful for businesses and for fun too, because you're going to be able to have games that are played on your MacBook Air or your MacBook Pro or iMac, and then mirror it over to a big screen TV. If you're doing a presentation, you could do Wi-Fi mirroring through an Apple TV. Your computer can create an ad hoc wireless network that's then controlled that controls your Apple TV that's hooked up to a projector. So you could see a lot of professionals bringing their MacBook Air, bringing an Apple TV, hooking up the Apple TV to a projector, and there you go. You can control your presentation. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so some other little tricks here with iCloud. So in terms of if you want to save stuff the old-fashioned way, there are two options that are helpful. Let's say you have a document open and you want to create a duplicate and save it somewhere else. So you can press Shift Command S, and that automatically creates a duplicate. Now the other big thing here is that you can name documents right in the header of the document. So you just click there, and you've got like a drop-down menu that says rename, move to, duplicate, lock, browse old versions. So you get a time machine like function if you want to browse old versions. In this document I don't have any prior versions. And then if you delete it, it gives you do you want to delete it or do you want to save it? Now you can also press Command Option Shift S, and that gives you the ability to save the document somewhere else. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so other cool little additions to Mountain Lion are now you have a share buttons all over the place. Now, remember in Lion you had this great function called AirDrop, where in a Wi-Fi network you could put something in this AirDrop area over here and then send it to another Mac. Well, now you've got like this share button. So let's say this draft memo, if I click the share button, I can email it or send it by message or the AirDrop function. So that's really cool. You can also right-click on a document, and you get that share button in addition to other choices. So that's pretty cool. A pretty cool feature. Now another cool feature is, let's go to Safari, and Safari now you've got a share button in there, and so you already had that before for adding to reading list. Now you have you can send it to Twitter, so you have Twitter integration. So you're going to see more Twitter integration as well as Facebook integration, and or if you want to like have send a message as well as an email. Now the other thing that you have in Mountain Lion, which is very cool, is iCloud Tab Sync. So this is pretty neat. You can sync tabs across different computers. So I have the iPhone here, I have the iMac tabs that are open in Safari, and so this is kind of cool. If you opened it up on another device and you want to finish reading something, you can do so. So that's a pretty nifty feature. Now another good feature is that the Notes app has been removed from Mail and is standalone and syncs with the Notes app in your iPhone and iPad. So that's kind of cool. And then the Notes button, the Notes app now has things like folders. You can also have search in there. You can add links in there, photo attachments, and there's a built-in sharing button. Other little tweaks are that in the Launchpad app, you now have a search button, so you can search. So that's a nice little tweak. So there, it's good. There are like hundreds of like tweaks that add value, I think, to the operating system and make it worthwhile to upgrade. Another nice addition to Mountain Lion that didn't exist in Lion is now there's a Reminders app that's like the Reminders app on the iPhone and the iPad, and they sync together. And basically, developers are going to be able to send reminders from the apps that are created for the Macintosh. So this is really cool because you can also have, I think, geolocated reminders in the Mac app. Location-based reminders, and you could set priorities based on time, and it, I guess, integrates with the Calendar app. So that's a really nice addition. Now, curiously, the text editor app is great, but there's no companion text editor app on the iOS devices. I mean, I think with iCloud, Apple's striving to have apps that work through the cloud across both the Macintosh and the iOS platform, right? So, for example, the keynote numbers and keynote numbers and pages, they have counterparts in the iOS world, and so does the Reminders app, and so does the Messages app, and of course email does too, and so does the calendar. But then you've got this like text editor app, and it syncs with the cloud. It would be nice if you could access what's in your text editor also on the iOS devices. So if I was Apple, I'd complete the loop. I would create a text editor app. But then why do you have the text editor app if you have the Pages app? And it could confuse people. But I think if they don't do that, then they should have it so that any documents that you've created in the text editor are also available in the Pages apps. That would be smart. You could have a whole little subfolder section within Pages that said, and these are your text editor documents. Because otherwise it seems a little strange. Like, why don't you have a counterpart? I mean, boy, there's lots and lots of tweaks. Let's see. Oh, we should talk about the new security thing. Wait, before we get into that, if you have a MacBook Air with an SSD drive, you now have something called Power Nap, which allows your Mac to go to sleep, but your applications stay up to date in the background. So, your mails and your notebooks and reminders and messages, they're all awake in the background. So I think to put them on, let's go into System Preferences. Let's see, where would you put this? Under Energy Saver, I think. Power Adapter. Enable Power Nap while plugged into a power adapter while sleeping. Your Mac can back up using Time Machine and periodically check for new email, calendar, and other apps. Now, in terms of security, where is security? I mean, the system's preferences, I think, could get redone, because every time I look at it, I forget where this stuff is. Security and privacy. So this is a major change, because now, let's see, where is it? Firewall, no. This is tricky. Oh, yeah, here we go. Under General, it says allow applications downloaded. Now, I checked from anywhere, but most people should check just from the Mac App Store, which means you can only then install on your computer apps that come through the Mac App Store. Now, you might want to do that to have like ultimate security, because you know that it's been vetted from Apple. Now, the second category is from the Mac App Store or identified developers. So developers who have apps that are not in the Mac App Store but still submitted for some sort of review or certification by Apple, they can be downloaded from the internet and installed if you check this out, but at least that they're from identified developers. Now, if you want it like the old-fashioned way, from anywhere, which is the highest risk, because you might, install some app or something from someone who's nefarious, then you click anywhere. But anyways, so these are major changes. I mean, I think Apple's trying to push all developers to submit stuff through the App Store. And one advantage for us is that, Apple's sales policy in the App Store is if you buy it once, you can install it on multiple computers without paying extra costs. So, that's particularly good. I like that because it, keeps the stuff cheap. And also, you don't have to worry about serial numbers or some sort of code to activate it. You know that it's in your app account. So that's another cool feature. Okay, so the Mail app also got tweaked. Now there's this category called VIPs where you can sort of designate certain people as VIPs and then just press a VIP button in your inbox and you'll just see emails from, I guess, people you've designated VIPs. Also, there's a VIP smart mailbox where you can view all messages sent from VIPs. You click the VIP smart mailbox in the favorite bar. What else? Your preferences in mail will now be pushed to iCloud, so that, like, if you had VIPs and recent senders, it's synced across all devices. You can do inline find. It says here you can easily find a word or phrase in a message as you type. Mail instantly highlights all occurrences of the text you're looking for in a specific message. So there's a number of tweaks that are in there. Of course, I'm leaving out a major change, which is Safari now has a unified search and address bar like Chrome. So you no longer have, separate areas. You can just do a Google search right here, or a Bing search. And like I could write, let's write Google. And let's see, here we go, and boom. So it's not just an address bar, it's a search bar too. So, that's another tweak that I like. Okay, so those were, to me, I guess some of the more significant improvements that come with Mountain Lion. And I think, look, for $19, I think it's worth it. I think it's a zippier operating system. I like the iCloud integration. The voice dictation, to me, the iCloud integration, the access to the messaging app, the access to the reminders app, and the notifications area, to me, those alone, also the AirPlay mirroring, those things are all big. I think these are the major tweaks to it. So I think, if you use a Mac a lot and you're on Lion or even Snow Leopard, this is the future. It's a nice implementation. They didn't go crazy. It's an incremental improvement, but with nice solid tweaks, and it's only $19. I think everybody should upgrade. It's an easy upgrade. You just go to the Mac App Store and you buy it and you download. And so overall, I think it's worthwhile, and you should get it. Finally, I want to talk about a little bit of a controversy that occurred since the last podcast, and that is Sparrow, which has been a great mail client for the Macintosh and also the iPhone and the iPad, and I guess also on Android, announced that it was acquired, or it's getting acquired, the small little team behind it, from Google, and Google's not going to support any future updates of Sparrow. So a lot of people are upset about that. Some people say, they feel betrayed by Sparrow because they paid a few, $15 or a couple of dollars for the app, and now it's been acquired. And, my view is, look, what can you do? The amount of money these people are making compared to what Google's offering them is probably nothing. And yeah, you bought it, but, with any third-party application, you don't have a guarantee that they're going to support it, and so a lot of people were saying, oh, look, Sparrow's better than the mail client. The mail client is made by Apple. It worked for me. Sparrow might have been a little slicker, but my sort of view was, I've got this nice mail client from Apple, and so why not use that? So I'm sort of on the side of some people who say, look, Sparrow's developers had to do what they had to do. There's no guarantee when you buy a third-party app that it's going to stay in business forever. I was listening to Marco Arment and Dan Benjamin talk about this, and their point of view is, look, you don't have a guarantee with any third-party app that they're going to develop it forever. The developers aren't your slaves. They have families, they have responsibilities, and they have to do what's best for them. So it's too bad, but, it's a lesson here, which is, nothing lasts forever on the internet. And so, today's client or today's app might be your favorite, but it might not get updated. It might not get developed. if the developer can't make money, and it might disappear. So nothing lasts forever. Anyways, I guess Apple's going to work on improving Mail, because if it doesn't, then it's going to lag behind Android development and other competitors like Microsoft. Okay, so that's it for episode 123 of the Apple Podcast. This is Lex at Max Future. Thanks for listening. And again, you can support this podcast by giving it a positive review in the iTunes Store. So thanks for listening, and see you next week.
This has been a Max Future production.